Pulse Point's unfaithful accord. Perfume labs don't sleep. They steep. After the last tour group stops pretending to know the difference between bergamot and bitter orange, after the studio lights cool from their small theater, the building lowers its voice to a hush that smells of ethanol and flowers with a memory. Beakers breathe. Scales blink a single green eyelash. Maceration tanks dream in the language of temperature, and 100 thin glass pipettes stand upright like a choir of transparent reeds, each waiting to carry a river down to one exact drop. I'm Mark, the compounder-in-chief, the man our house calls at 2:00 a.m. when a vat pitches a tantrum or a formula decides it wants to be a poem instead of a product. If you've never stood in a lab with your hands bandaged in nitrile and your nose learning a strange kindness from things you can't see, you don't know how a room can ask for honesty without moving a hinge. My bench is a polite disorder. Blotters clipped in little white flags, a jeweler's loop for reading tiny batch codes, an org, a perfumer's organ stacked with vials wearing names like secrets. Iso-E, Hedione, Ambrox, Labdanum, Castoreum, history's lipstick, orris butter that shines with powdered restraint. There's a blue tin that once held candied violets. It holds the sort of small things that stop belonging to anyone. A broken atomizer, two clear hair ties, a bobby pin bent into a question mark. If it sounds like I'm cataloging, I am. This trade is memory with numbers. Claire, my wife, then, could make a room forgive itself. PR and events director for the house, she could teach donors to say siage like a blessing and convince a chandelier to glow as though remembering its first electricity. We met when a headspace analyzer seized mid-demonstration. I coaxed the machine like you talk a child out of a tree. She held the audience in the sparkle between crisis and charm. After she asked to smell my wrists, and when I lifted them, left, vetiver right, orange blossom, she smiled with her mouth and not her lips. We kept Tuesdays for ourselves, the way you fence one mouthful of week and call it yours so the calendar won't eat you for sport. She'd tap twice on the employee entrance. The guard would pretend his clipboard is a gatekeeper to fate, and we'd lock the lab door with a turn my bones learned by heart. If that reads like boasting, it's only because I'm building you the room. There's a notch in my lower back from the edge of the organ where she pushed me, laughing, and an ounce of orris warmed like a confession on the floor. There's a comma of a birthmark tucked under her left clavicle that I could find with my mouth even if the fume hood roared. There's the way she'd say, "Give me 10," and I'd spend 9 like a prince and hide one under my tongue for the famine that visits lovers who think they're safe. The first wrongness wasn't a color, it was a note. Claire lives at the intersection of peony and pear, with pepper for wit and sandalwood to make a room take her seriously. That night beneath her borrowed orchard, something green flickered, crushed mint. Beneath the mint, a handsome dampness, violet leaf. Beneath the leaf, a hum that wasn't ours at all, ambroxan turned up to camera ready, the kind of molecule men in a hurry mistake for destiny. I wrote the building a generous story. A guest kissed her cheek and left a trace. An intern overspritzed in the lift and the scent found her sleeve. People are rivers. We carry each other without consent all day. Then Tuesday came again and the green flickered again, not accident but grammar. In the staff lounge, 2 splits of Risset emptied into the bin without stems drying in the rack. On my steel bench, a damp ring formed around a glass we hadn't used, and a lips with a faint plum mouth upon its lip. When I ran the night's drain trap, a fresher sweetness breathed up from the pipes, lich and something metallic, like a spoon pressed to the tongue. She said open the way, an engineer says load-bearing. We were folding towels, she halves, I thirds. Marriage is geometry with heat. when Claire leaned her hip into the counter like sailors trust hull more than sea. With rules, she added, and she didn't touch me while she said it. In our dialect, that's how truth enters a house, hands visible, voice even. Us first. No one from the company, no vendors or influencers. Tell me before, not after. Protection always. Our bed is a sovereign state. I want it to be larger than a laboratory. We wrote it down on the back of a press list and signed where names go when you still believe paper supervises oxygen. 2 Tuesdays we were brave like a small religion. The third, at 11:09, her text read, "Client dinner ran long, don't wait up," and the lab answered in ways only I heard. The security log noted a door held open sixes, a human pause. The GCMS, a gas chromatograph that reads truth in parts per billion, blew an innocent whistle as it warmed itself for a run not scheduled on the board. Camera 4 in the Jasmine Tunnel blinked to static for a quarter minute and came back wide-eyed, the way children return from a dare. I don't set traps in sanctuaries. I tune rooms until they can't lie. So I did a perfumer's sin. I hid a smell inside a smell. In the linalool reservoir I placed a ghost accord of my own making, orris, white pepper, and an obscure sulfur lactone that blooms only on skin warmed by intent. Harmless, faint, detectable only if you teach your nose to listen to the space between. I misted the inside handle of the staff door with a microdose and turned the organ's second shelf 2 degrees out. Not enough to see, just enough to call out compulsions that tidy by reflex. I slid a blotter under the edge of the bench. If someone lifted it, the paper would crease the way fog remembers a breath. She came late, hair fast, makeup brave enough to hold a script without cruelty. I kissed her wrists and found my own ghost coming home, fingers tidy without thinking, blotter creased like a polite lie. "Don't make me the villain," Claire said, not pleading, just tired. "I asked for before," I said. "I thought I did," she said. In her grammar, client dinner counted. She had kept tempo. I insisted on melody. He followed with the drift of men who believe walls were invented to witness them. Adrian Vale, brand face, ambassador, camera graduate, had shot our Mother's Day campaign last season and taught donors to say projection like an oath. He smelled expensive in a lazy way. Mint gum, violet leaf, and the musky laundry of celebrity. He didn't look at me. He looked past me, the way a man peeks into a mirror and waits for applause. "We'll go," he told the air, respectful as a cat. "We won't perform in here," I said. I held the lab door because buildings deserve ceremony when asked to carry weight. The latch clicked like punctuation. The room exhaled once. We separated like professionals who can carry breakables. Claire took the calendar where other people's emergencies live and the blazer that teaches glass how to behave. I kept the chipped mug with the house's old emblem, a stylized tear, and my habit of calling machines by the names they answer to. Lawyers moved nouns between us in rooms that smelled like toner and winter. We signed our tired names where brave people pretend signatures will suture anything. Work found my wrists and put them to honest use. A cap broke free in maceration. I stemmed the alcohol like a medic and loved the burn. The interns learned that civet is history's dirty love letter, not a dare for TikTok. The head perfumer called at 3:00 a.m. and asked me to nurse a base that kept separating like a couple not ready to admit they are. I watched molecules talk each other into staying with a magnet and my breath. Nor arrived with a toolbox and a shoulder like gravity had considered staying. Senior lab tech on paper, systems whisperer in practice, she wore steel-toe boots and an apron that had earned every stain on it. She moved through the lab like things rearranged for her benefit without being asked. "Which of your children is lying?" she asked, head tilted at the GCMS. Column 3, I said. It peaks where it pretends it doesn't. It wants to be wanted, she said, and ran a solvent the exact temperature of forgiveness through the sin. We began with verbs that don't bruise. She taught me how pumps sulk when you talk to them in Celsius but forgive you in Kelvin. I taught her the exact drawl Hedione gets when it's bored. She left half an orange on my bench, and I slipped the peel into my pocket so my day could smell like better news. At 3:13, when the extraction room's hum found its monastery note, we stood forehead close to a vat of rose that sounded like a crowd you can love without meeting anyone in it. The first time she touched me, it was my wrist, 1 degree, so a pipette wouldn't bite an orifice and bruise. There, she said, and the heat lived in her voice without misbehaving. We aren't children. Speed is fear in a new suit. The first time we kissed, we stood where the lab stops pretending to be just a workplace in the dark behind the organ, between Narrowly and Sandalwood like a door that had learned to be an arch. Her mouth tasted of orange and coffee and the warm place that should be reserved for courage and love. She kept her eyes open for a breath, not to check for cameras. We don't aim lenses at prayer, just to choose me twice. My palm fit the small of her back where a day stores its opinion of itself. She made a sound I put in my pocket for famine. We counted to 10 and used 9. The last minute belongs to the room. We built rules that felt like respect, not fences. No hands on blotters where other people will smell their futures. No mouths near open beakers. Ghosts live in vapors and deserve boundaries. Yes to the cold room after the last run, where the air sings and the stainless teaches your skin humility. Yes to the loading dock at blue light time, where the city sniffs itself and decides we're worth it. Yes to my bench with the task lamp off, her knee resting against mine under a maintenance log that had stopped pretending to be pure. The launch came back around because money adores a mirror. First light, they called the new fragrance because copywriting loves the lie of inevitability. Claire arrived in a dress that taught glass how to stare. Adrian drifted behind her with a mouth that trusted lenses. We nodded like adults who refuse to make a building carry what mouths can carry. Nor wore black because glue hides there, and crossed behind them with a crate of testers, and a grin she had negotiated with in a restroom mirror that never flattered a coward. From the stage, someone misused alchemy and another marketed skin as a verb. The donors applauded as if romance had patents. I did my rounds because habit is my chosen god. The organ, obedient. The GC, honest. Camera 4, loyal. On my bench, the violet tin clicked under my thumb. Inside, 2 clear hair ties, a bobby pin bent into a question mark, a broken atomizer, a paper strip with a dried crescent of plum. Not trophies, grammar. Quotation marks around a chapter I refused to perform twice. After breakdown, when the last guest forgot to pretend they knew how to say coumarin, nor found me by the jasmine tunnel with my palm flat on a leaf, as if chlorophyll could teach my hand manners. A crescent of wax glowed on her wrist where warmth lives. "You look like you left yourself on the bench," she said. "I'm practicing staying," I said. "As what?" She smiled like nouns are more faithful than we deserve. "As a guest," I said, and it felt like a number my body could hold without counting. We took the iron stair to the roof. Roofs tell the truth and don't ask for witnesses. The city smelled of wet stone and exciting lies, nor pressed me against the parapet with a competence that made gravity behave. We kissed like people who respect danger and pay their bill. My belt caught the rail and we laughed, because slapstick belongs in the liturgy of rooms that have saved you. We stopped before the moon learned our names. There's a version where I go to war. I cut footage together, timestamp a reckoning, pour truth into a flute and make it fizz in public. That version ends with a building that will never tell me its secrets again. I walked 2 bodies out of a door. I kept a sanctuary from being humiliated. I chose smaller verbs and learned they outlast knives. Summer taught the chillers humility and taught me patience. The new intern learned the difference between mystery and mess. One is a gift, the other a hobby with better lighting. A pop star came by to pretend to design her own fragrance. We sent her home with a formula that wouldn't betray her on stage, nor taught me that hoses obey out of love for torque, not authority, and that I go quiet 3 breaths before my temper remembers it has a mouth. I taught her the tiny, tired sigh a scale gives before it decides to forgive a careless gram. One Tuesday, the door held open 0006 out of habit and no one answered. The GC warmed only for scheduled truth. Camera 4 didn't sneeze. I laughed into my sleeve, nor laughed into my collarbone. The lab pretended not to approve and gave us the mercy of ordinary air. If you ever wander our house on a night it pretends not to have, and a voice tells you not to press your nose into an open bottle because power is a strange perfume, that's me pretending I'm only talking about aldehydes. If you see a woman in steel-toe boots pause to rest her cheek against a vat for 1 second like prayer, that's nor explaining to the room that we're its students. You won't see the ghost accord unless the room asks for ghosts, and there isn't a softer way. You won't see the violet tin unless you already know why punctuation saves lives. I lock the lab door and feel the burr under my thumb where 100 stories polish the steel honest. I kill the bench lights in the order the molecules prefer, so darkness arrives like a language the room remembers. The maceration tanks sigh their last consent, nor steals my last clean minute because she can. I let her, because that rule outlived all the others. Tip the night. We walk the corridor with our hands in each other's pockets like we invented warmth. The city outside makes a meal of its reflection. The lab decides to trust us until morning. Perfume labs don't sleep, they steep. They forgive slowly and then all at once when you stop making them host scenes they didn't audition for. We don't have 10 anymore. We take the minutes we can carry and leave the rest hanging in the air where jasmine keeps them bright. In the morning, a stranger will dab a blotter on his wrist and believe, for a breath, that something invisible loves him back. I will try to be as careful with the living. The violet tin on my bench will click shut like a sentence that refuses to be a period. A semicolon, 2 clauses joined by a breath the flowers taught me to take.